Hello and welcome to Reproductive Rebel. I am your hostess, Adrienne Irizarry. As an Eastern medicine practitioner that uses holistic approaches to women's care, I tackle the elephant in the room, our collective frustration with the allopathic healthcare system. In this podcast, I give you a new way to look at your body, understand what it is telling you, and care for your reproductive health. Welcome to this journey. I'm so glad you're here. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are. I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show.
Authentic pieces of my heart that I feel are so darn important when talking about the subject. So bear with me if I cry a little bit of the way through this, because this is a hard one for me, but I feel like it is important to talk about it in all of its real, vulnerable, and often messy to receive everything that I have to say. And I totally hold you in my heart. I don't feel that way because this is an episode that I don't think I could have recorded a year ago, but I think is incredibly important to record now. So here we go. I think it is very symbolic, and I don't know if it was chosen that way on purpose. I actually do not know too much about the origins, I'll be very honest, about Pregnancy Loss and Remembrance Day, but I find it very fitting that it falls in October, because October is squarely in the middle of the fall season, where we are releasing, and the trees are mirroring that energy in our bodies, where we are releasing what no longer serves us. We are preparing for that hibernation period that helps prepare us for all of the energy of the spring and summer months. And this is a particularly important time of year for a lot of healing to take place. And I think it's very fitting that Pregnancy Loss and Remembrance Day happens during this time frame, because whether your loss is in October, like mine, or you are acknowledging the day because of your own personal experience, October seems very symbolic to me. So I am recording this on the anniversary of losing my daughter. Those are hard words to get out of my mouth. So a year ago today, I was 10 weeks pregnant and woke up to clots. And as somebody who has, at the time that I had my miscarriage, I knew I was having a girl, which made it all that much more real for me. Previous miscarriages had always happened before 7 weeks, So while each of them heartbreaking in their own right, nothing ripped me open the way that this one did, because I held my daughter in my hands, and it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I found it very cruel to bury her on Pregnancy Loss and Remembrance Day last year. So, right after, and then the grief sets in, the anger sets in, the hopelessness sets in, particularly if you're somebody who has been through this process more than once, like I have. I became a practitioner to help other people not experience the heartbreak of loss and the unexplained infertility diagnoses and things like that. It's what fuels my passion for this work. It's what's fueled my research as a practitioner. And when people put into practice everything that has come out of each one of my losses, they have success in their own journeys. And honestly, it's the most rewarding feeling in the entire world to know that my heartache did good for someone else, helped someone else to be able to hold the baby that they didn't think they'd be able to. Yep, see, I told you I was gonna cry through this. But I think it's important to show that the feelings are there even a year later. Because when you have a loss like that, you don't mend overnight. You don't mend in a week. You don't mend in a month. Grief is a process, and you create different relationships with it as you heal different parts of yourself. It never goes away either, because it's part of the fabric of who you are, and that's okay. They're all part of your story, and every single one of them was important on your journey in some way. I had a really hard time wrestling with that at the beginning. A really hard time with it. Oh, I was so angry after having a healthy pregnancy with an absolutely magical little girl who is, at the time of this recording, 11 years old and turning into the most incredible young woman that I am so proud to call her my daughter. I never once thought that I would get the one and only pregnancy I had had up until that point, and beautiful, and gonna take the world by storm as she grows. So the surprise, trying to have a baby with the love of my life, was something I really had a hard time wrapping my head around. And after our first 3 losses, I went through the entire intervention. Due to the experience with the doctor that I had gone to see, I didn't feel like it was in alignment with myself and my priorities at that point. And it became the launch pad for Moon Essence and the practice that I hold so dear, and all the souls who've come through it. So Moon Essence began out of a moment of sheer heartache after 3 losses of my own and no answers from the Western allopathic model. I decided to go in search of my own answers. And the Eastern way of thinking, the Eastern lens, seemed so much more in alignment with the way that felt good in my system and made sense to me. So I went looking there for answers. And as I'm talking about this, I'm realizing that Moon Essence, this is the creation story for my practice, but so much of it is bound up in grief, and the grief that I really felt called to protect others from. So my understanding of that grief has evolved over time. And I realized that when we are comfortable, we don't change because we're comfortable. We want to stay comfortable. And it's oftentimes through some sort of a trauma or crisis or loss that we are propelled in another direction. And my losses propelled me in the direction of my life's purpose. That's why I feel so passionately about the work that I do. It's why I love the work that I do so deeply. It is a part of me. I give every one of the clients that walk through my door because their health and well-being are so incredibly important to me. And it really not only a part of who I am, but it's really because Moon Essence was born out of grief and out of death, and trying to create a workable relationship with all of that. So I feel that it is fitting on the anniversary of losing my daughter to share with you where Moon Essence came from and why I practice the way that I do. Because everyone that I work with, and I know it didn't feel good in my body, and I work really, really hard to make sure that everybody that I work with feels seen and heard and important, comes out of my experience, not getting answers, not feeling heard, having a reproductive endocrinologist laugh. When I went to him looking for answers and understanding and resolution, because he was supposed to be the guy with all the answers, and he laughs and says, well, your test results are fine, his test results are fine. I have no idea why you're having this issue, but we can do IVF with ICSI, and then left the room just as quickly as he came in with no explanation, no nothing. And as I sat with my heart breaking in my car, because he was supposed to be the guy with answers, I realized that you can get me pregnant, but we still weren't solving the reason why I couldn't stay pregnant. Moon Essence has come out of all of that. So again, we go back to the fact that if we're comfortable, we stay stagnant, right? The universe had a bigger plan for me. It wanted me to step into my purpose. It wanted me to step into what I was called to do in this life, which is to work in service to others, which I've always felt called to do, but to do it in this specific way. And man, was there a lot of pain that went into that transformation, and had a couple more losses. One, a set of twins 2 days before my birthday. And then magic stopped. There were no more pregnancies, but there were also no more losses. But this amazing thing was happening at the time that at the time I didn't think about, but hindsight's 2020, right? So looking back at it, I realized that I wasn't physically getting pregnant in my body because I was birthing this practice and this new way of moving through the world, this understanding of myself as a cyclical being, and that the best version of myself was tied up, intricately woven into the practitioner I was becoming, the woman I was becoming, the person I was becoming. I was seeing people differently. I was hearing people differently. It became so meaningful to me to be able to hold the hand of somebody across the table from me who had just experienced a loss of their own and say, I see you. I could meet them in that messy space at whatever level they were comfortable with. And that was magical to me. because I didn't have someone to do that when I went through those losses. Now, so much about the practice now has, is all about the birth and thriving and abundance, of your body resources in order to be fertile and all of these things. But all of this beauty was born out of sheer heartache. So when I got pregnant last year, I felt like, holy cow, I am here. I've built what the universe called me to do. I am ready. It is time. I was so excited. I had that early sneak peek blood test to find out what I was having because I was just so excited I couldn't contain myself. And I found out I was having a girl, and I don't even have words how excited I was to find out. And then I got far enough along. We got past that scary 7-week mark because, when you've been through a process like this, you work it up in your head. You're like, oh, if I can just get past this benchmark, or, oh, what happened? What if, right? You got all these what ifs. And the thing is that it is meant to be, then it is meant to be. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've taken out of this year is that it wasn't time. It wasn't time yet. And so we told our kids, and we were just getting up the courage to tell more people beyond that, tell our family. And I had my loss. I got COVID in the first trimester of my pregnancy. And I didn't have COVID bad either. That was the part that killed me so much at the time, was I didn't have COVID bad. I had about 48 hours of low grade symptoms, and that was pretty much it. And, beyond normal first trimester pregnancy fatigue, right? I really didn't feel awful at all. And I was like, phew, okay, I made it. Like, it's going to be okay. See, I crested this. I kicked it. No big deal. We're going to be great. And then I woke up the morning of the 14th of October, 2021, clots. And I felt myself rip open. I listened to a podcast not that long ago that the hostess described that ripping open process. And she has such an eloquent way with words that over again. And man, was it an ugly cry. But I realized in listening to her story about her own loss at 14 weeks to this miracle baby that she had been given, which is exactly how I felt about my own, was that she was right. That when we get comfortable and we get complacent, we don't move. And the gift that my daughter gave me was the nudge that I needed to move Lunescence further into the future and the direction that I still was being called to go in. But I didn't see it at the time because grief, it's ugly and it sneaks up on you when you least expect it. And as you're passing through all of the different phases of grief, you are angry and you are bitter and you are depressed and you cry, and there's so many layers to the experience. And I started numb, and I felt like I just didn't even have the energy to speak. And then I got angry. I've done so much work. I've worked so hard to learn what I need to learn, to fix what I need to fix in my body, to step into my calling in my life. And for what? I still can't have this baby. I felt like a failure. I felt like an imposter. I felt like a fraud. And then as all of that process continued to unwind and unfold, I realized that this is so much bigger than me. It's so much bigger than me. Who am I to think that I can fix this for myself? I can get my body in right relationship. I can make sure that I'm living in a cyclical way, in a mindful way, in a health focused way. I can manage my stress. I can manage my diet, I can manage my weight. All of these things I can be proactive about. I can be mindful of. But ultimately, it's up to the universe, whether it's my turn and my time or not. And that was a really hard pill to swallow initially, because it forced me to take a look at my ego and my ego self and say, did you really think that you were bigger? And I realized that I really thought I could fix it for myself. I really thought I could fix it. And this year, her death has taught me to really examine ego and check it at the door, because there's no room here for ego. I can bring my gifts and my love and my knowledge in the support of people's journey to wellness and abundance and fertility. And then it is up to them to take those tools and use it for whatever their goals are in their life, whether that's fertility, whether that's preventing fertility, whether that's not feeling so miserable going through perimenopause, not living with chronic infections, or whatever it is. I'm here to be the teacher, the educator, the cheerleader, to help them along their journeys so that they can go after whatever their hearts desire. And that's the gift that my daughter gave me. Her death showed me that I am the teacher, and that that's the bigger plan for me, to help other people, empower other people to live their best lives and go after whatever goals they have for themselves or their families or their future families. So as I sit here on the anniversary of burying my daughter, I realized she gave me an incredible gift. It was really hard to see for a long time. It was really hard to see for a long time. My other losses, I felt like I bounced back in the matter of a few weeks. And honestly, this time, it's been a year that this phoenix has been transforming out of the fire of that loss. I lost a few months of clarity in my life, and I'm so, so grateful to every single one of my clients who held space for me during that time. because caring for them gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning, because I had a really hard time doing that for several months. And as I'm walking, I'm looking at the tree that I laid her to rest under and realize that it's so much bigger than me. And I thank her for being the catalyst to bring me to this new place. So any of you who are listening who've had a loss like this, I invite you to think about the meaning, not the why did this happen to me, not the of course this isn't going to happen for me, none of that victim talk, because so many women experience loss and suffer in silence. They don't talk about it. We don't have safe spaces to talk about it. We don't share that we have this common thread of pregnancy loss. And it's a taboo in our culture that we need to just get rid of, because it happens. It happens for a lot of reasons. It happens because we have pollutants in our air, we have crap in the soil, we have diminished integrity in farming practices, we spray crap on our crops, we have EMF and other types of technology that screw with the way our bodies move through the world. Like, there are so many things that our bodies are bombarded with on a daily basis that are just creating more and more hurdles in this fertility process. 40 years ago, and it isn't just women, it's men too. And yes, I'm talking about assigned at birth because of the process that we're talking about. But I mean, average sperm counts used to be 150 million. And now men are barely making it beyond that 20 million threshold in their semen analysis. The average right now, the last data that I looked at, was 30 million. 20 million is the threshold to be considered fertile in a semen analysis for sperm. Like, our container is not helping us, men and women both. Women should not be the ones that bear the brunt of why fertility isn't working. We are all suffering with fertility challenges of one kind or another. And those numbers are going up all the time. So you are not alone. I see you. And God knows my heart goes out to you, or loss or losses. And I am so incredibly sorry that you've had that experience, because it is painful. And grief sneaks up on you in the middle of the grocery store while you're trying to pick out avocados and figure out which ones are not going to go bad in one day. And then all of a sudden, this wave hits you and just about knocks you over, and you're in a public place and you don't want to cry in the store. Like, this is real. And so many of us experience it. So I am sharing the story of my practice and the story of my losses and the story of my heartache, because it's important. It is important that we realize that we're not alone in this, And that if we have not personally experienced a loss, we know someone who has. And that healing process is hard and it is painful. And at the same time, if you can allow the gifts in, it can be really beautiful, because every single one of my losses taught me how to be a better practitioner, how to hold space in a more meaningful way, how to move out of living in an ego space into a heart-centered space, how to take all the knowledge that I amassed to help myself and help other people, and realize that my gift in all of this by my daughter. So if you are someone who has experienced loss like this, think about the changes that came after that loss. Did it encourage you to change jobs? Did it encourage you to reduce your hours at work so that you had more space, care for your body in a more meaningful way? Did it act as a catalyst to move you in another direction? And maybe one that feels more heart-centered or soul-filling now than it did at the time that it happened. So you are not alone. And I wanted to share this on Pregnancy Loss and Remembrance Day, because you are not alone. I see you. I'm here for you. And I hope, my hope with all of my heart is that the grief and the fear of another loss end up transformed in some way as you think about all of the things that came after, the gifts that came after, the life-changing things that came after. Because as I think back over the course of my 7 losses, I realized every single one of them changed how I moved through the world in some way. The first one encouraged me to change job roles. The second one moved me completely out of corporate America into working for myself so that I could take better care of my body. I couldn't have done that without the support of my incredible spouse. But he believed in me. And I did freelance work for a while. And my third loss moved me towards reproductive technologies, which is what what they typically do for a process, that type of thing. So it helps me help them navigate the system. That's what that loss gave me. The next one was a partnership collaboration in a practice. It brought me out of working at my house into the public. So every single one of them changed the way that I moved through the world and literally birthed the next iteration of luminescence, of my life's work, of my calling. So what gifts were given to you? And I know that there are some people that are listening to this that are probably raging at the podcast right now and going, I am too angry to see any gifts. I'm too heartbroken to see any gifts. And sister, I have been in that space and I see you too. And the gifts may not be apparent right away. It could be months, it could be years before you see them. But I assure you that this ripping open was to propel you in the direction of your purpose, or a healthier way of life, or a different biorhythm, or something. Because the circumstances under which you got pregnant, something wasn't working. So, in closing, I just want to tell you all that I appreciate you holding space for me as I share this heartbreaking story of mine. And I hope, my deepest hope from my heart, is that it helps at least one person to feel like they're not alone, that they're not an island navigating this crap by themselves, like their grief and their anger and their sadness and their fear during their first trimester, or maybe even also the second trimester of their next pregnancy, doesn't paralyze them, because these are all very real. I see them every day in my practice, and I experience them myself. So I invite you, when you're ready, to see the gifts that you've been given through this process, to make your heart open and ready for either another attempt or the future that pregnancy opens for you. So much love to you all. Thank you for listening to my story and for acknowledging Pregnancy Loss and Remembrance Day with me, and the memory of all of my babies, but particularly my daughter. Thank you.
If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist, herbalist, sound healer, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment with Adrienne for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like us and follow Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.